Hey, welcome to our first podcast called The Balancing Act.
Yep.
A chance for us to explore discipleship and what it looks like to live as a follower of Jesus in the world.
Yeah,
That's at the heart of it.
yeah. I think that's what we're planning on doing. That's what we're trying to figure out. But I think maybe just for our viewers and just to dig a little bit deeper into this first episode, like let's talk a little bit more about why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Why have we got here? Why did we decide to give ourselves more work to do? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good question. Well, really at the heart of it, the birthing of this podcast really had taken shape even before you had arrived in Australia. For me, I've been thinking for a long time, what does it look like to help our people live out genuine discipleship? Not in the church, but as they think about discipleship in their workplaces and in their family dynamics and in their friendship groups and all the various spheres of life, right? Like that's at the heart of it. And one of the things that kind of hit me was sermons are an important place for that, but they're limited.
Yep.
And they're limited in a couple of different ways. They're limited because we're in a particular text of Scripture that we're working through, that we are looking for moments of application. And those application points are really important, but even there, they're limited because they're limited in time, they're limited in the dynamic nature. And what's really interesting is as we come to these points of application, for us, as preachers and teachers, we're having these multitude of discussions, in the week around what does it look like? How does this passage apply in our own lives? What does this mean for our people and the likes? And so the conversation is always much bigger, but is reduced down to a point or 2 points because it's a 35, 40-minute kind of space.
Yeah.
And I wanted to explore that broader conversation for people to jump in on.
Yeah, I think application is the most difficult part of a sermon for me.
Yeah.
Because while wrestling with the text has its place and has its I guess its priority, when you look across the congregation, there are so many different people going through so many different things, and then you got to say, well, I've got to get 2 points out of this. Like, how do you do that without just going, well, these are really broad, general points that we're going to make, and actually we do understand that it's more nuanced, more in depth than just that we make, right?
Right. And so that concept for me for a long time has been, what is that space?
Yeah.
What is that space to explore that? And more than just us exploring that, but how do we get other people who are actually living this stuff out already?
Yeah.
And how do we get them to share their experiences so that we can grow and that other people can grow?
Yeah.
And that's been this concept for me for a long time. And I suppose podcasts kind of post-COVID have become a bit of a thing. And so it becomes a bit of a platform that I think is a really helpful tool.
Yeah.
Further to that, I think one of the things that really highlighted and solidified this idea of doing a podcast together was actually in the process of calling you to Australia and to Orange Baptist Church in particular. So that was a really interesting journey for both you and me, I'm sure. But just so that you guys are aware, like we just put out an advert when the church decided that we needed another pastor, and we put an advert out. And we had a whole bunch of different people apply.
And the ad, I might say, the ad said no one from outside Australia.
Which was funny because the ad said no one outside from Australia, but I think we had like 8 applicants from Africa. But I was really disappointed because none of them were a Nigerian prince. But that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. But there was this other guy from South Africa who, when we opened up the CV, just because I was like, oh, well, we'll have a read. There was something in that instantaneously. And so that story is a funny story. I'm going to kind of move on to that a little bit because I think that was this place, as I said earlier, of this solidification around this idea of a
Yeah.
podcast. Because before we even got into an interview process, I reached out to you and said, "Do you just want to have a conversation?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know you. I was
Yeah.
intrigued by your honesty and your integrity
Yeah.
in that cover letter, and I wanted to explore that. And so we end up having conversations
Yeah.
around what does life look like and philosophy of ministry,
Yeah.
ideas around what do we understand the church to be and the likes, and that kind of led to this formal process of interview, which then led to a formal process of our church voting and bringing you here. But man, between that time when we voted you in, by the time you landed, man, we had hours of
Yeah, we
conversation,
spoke a lot,
right?
man. We spoke, and I think the thing for me was part of going through this process was, well, Australia's been classified as a nanny state, and I now actually don't necessarily think that's completely true. I think there's elements of it that's good, but besides the point, it was classified as a nanny state, and I was going, well, I'm coming from a place in South Africa where Christianity is so welcomed.
Yeah, so discipleship
It's
is so different.
it's so embraced. It's so like, yeah, everything that we did, I could go into a township off the street and evangelize, and people would welcome me into their homes and sing with me, and it was this beautiful
Mm.
space. Then I'm confronted with this idea, well, hold on, this is a secular state, a nanny state, and Christianity is not all actually perceived in the greatest of lights. And so, how do I make this transition? How do I bridge this gap? Um, and that is part of what we were talking through, and part of what I'm probably still struggling with, really. I don't necessarily think I've got it.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, mate, I don't have it either. And not because I came from South Africa, but because like I've been a Christian for 20 years.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in a Christian home. So my whole world shifted
Yeah.
in a pretty dramatic kind of way. And as it shifted, learning to engage in a in the culture that I've been born into, but now through the lenses of a follower of Jesus was so difficult.
Yeah.
And so, what did that look like? And I kind of was reminded of that when I was talking to you in those times. What does it look like to live out discipleship? What does it look like to be a disciple and evangelize? And what does it look like to live out faithful Christianity? And how do Christians engage with public spaces and politics and
Yeah.
all of these elements? And we just had so many hours of conversation. It solidified this idea of, well, as I said, sermons are narrow in a sense. This conversation with you was so broad and so rich. I was like, oh, maybe a podcast to invite people into these conversations would be that space where we can talk through and explore some of those nuances
Yeah.
of living as a disciple in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's been sort of our heart, is just going, well, come with us, journey with us, walk with us, because we as pastors, and I use pastors because it
I just,
bothers me.
yeah, yeah.
But as
You bother me. Yeah, it's
pastors,
true.
we struggle with this. I
Yeah.
wonder what the rest of the congregation is going, man, I'm a mom, I'm a tradie, I'm a whatever, and I'm just like, what does living for Jesus look like in my world? And so
Yeah.
we want to explore that, man.
Yeah.
We want to know that, as you see, it's plates balancing. We want to know that when I drop a plate, I'm no longer a Christian, or
Or
when
I'm not condemned, or what does that look like? Yeah.
how do I do this?
Yeah.
Without being self-condemning, judging others, judging myself. Like, it's a hard journey to walk
Yeah, it
in
is.
a really difficult space.
And I think one of the beautiful things and one of the challenging things is to take a growth mindset
Yes.
and to take a place of humility and learning in this space.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Even for us as professional Christians, as vocational ministers, you hit the nail on the head, man. Like, this is hard for us too.
Yeah.
and how we raise kids and how we think about finances and how we think about evangelism, how we think about engaging in the world. Man, it's a challenge for us. And so we want to explore that together, but it's not just together, right? So
Yeah.
we want to have people join us on the podcast, and we want to hear their story around how they're living out discipleship,
Yeah.
because this is a learning thing for us too. And we want to invite people on and hear the challenges and the complexities
Yeah.
that they're facing, that we're probably facing too, and then figuring out how how they navigate it and the likes. And I think that's going to be really interesting, because we're going to have people that we know and know well, and we are in complete agreement with theologically. We're going to have other people in this space who are going to challenge that
Yeah.
for us, who we don't necessarily agree with on lots of points of theology.
Yep.
But I want to hear them, and we want to have genuine conversations and go mining for these nuggets of gold,
Yep.
where we can learn and to grow. But I think one of the other components, just as almost as a byproduct of having different people on that we both agree and disagree with, is that we get to have grace-centered conversations with people who love Jesus but see the world differently and have different perspectives.
Yep.
That we get to disagree with one another graciously and have conversations that are rich. Because one of the battles that I have in the moment in Christianity, and I guess seen explicitly perhaps in other continents and other countries, but I actually feel it here, is this tribalism that takes place.
Yeah.
And so we only talk to people that we agree with. We only talk to people who are just like us, and we stay within our tribes. And that's not really us either.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? Some of it is confrontational. Some of it's going to be difficult. We're going to be, whatever, talking about parenthood, and some of it's going to make you feel uncomfortable. Like, I don't know if this is the way that I would do things, but it's good to hear how other people are doing things. Um, and so the journey that we go on is maybe sometimes just to put ourselves in uncomfortable places because we want to be humble and learn,
Yeah.
because we know we don't know everything.
Yeah.
But you also said something now that I think is so important. We're not talking about Christianity on a global stage.
No, we're not.
We're not talking about Christianity in Africa or in America. Like, we're talking about what's happening here in Australia and what it means for us in Australia to walk this walk out.
Yeah.
And so you're right. There may be tribalism on a global stage. There may be this division on a global stage. But it's here and it's evident
It's
here.
here. Yeah, it is here.
And so
Yeah.
this is what we want to live and break down these barriers that
Yeah.
allow what I think is a unified expression of the body of Christ, because we start with grace.
Yeah, for sure. And so a part of that, as we have guests on and we go through a process of sharing stories and life, and we get to hear their perspectives and the likes, we're also going to have a space, ideally, a space at the end of that conversation where we get to debrief that conversation,
Yeah.
which is going to be a really interesting space.
Yeah.
So just from a structural perspective, the plan is at the moment, at least, because it is us, it could change, to be fair, is we have someone on, we get to explore their walk with Jesus in the world, and then we get to debrief that and go, what was the nuggets of gold that we took out? Where did we agree? Where did we disagree?
Yeah.
That's going to be a cool space.
I think I'm excited to listen to other people, but I'm excited to and I know that's probably not a helpful or a healthy thing to say, but I'm excited to go, oh, they thought this and they thought that. It's like such a great space to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be so good. It's
Yeah.
going to be so
It'll
good.
be fun. So we're going to have a whole range of different people. So we've got people lined up who are working in really unique spaces within the medical industry.
Yep.
We're hoping to get some people on to have conversations on what does it look like to live in the public space, particularly around living as a Christian and a politician. We're hoping to nail that down in the next little while. We've got people having conversations on what does it look like to be an educator as a follower of Jesus in a secular environment. We want to have, we've even got this, I love this, but we're hoping very strongly that it's going to happen, but a much older, wiser couple who've lived this incredibly rich Christian life as missionaries.
Yep.
I am so interested to chat with them around their own experiences of change within Christianity over the last 90 odd years, and how they've navigated those spaces, and it's just crazy. But they're some of those people that we're going to have a chat with over the next little while, among others.
And I mean, as you can hear, this is politics and family dynamics and cultural
Living
shift
in- yeah,
over
yeah,
with
huge.
Christian, like we're talking medical area, like it's the idea is not to pigeonhole ourselves into one space, but it's really to say it's an all of life thing. Discipleship and living for Jesus is an all of life thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And so walk with us, journey with us.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you now, we're going to be just as surprised as you are about some of the things we'll talk through. And I think
I hope so.
that's going to be great.
And I can't wait to see the face of Jesus through the lives of people that we have on. I'm excited by that. So we want to invite you to come on a journey with us, come and grow with us, come and learn with us as we go through this journey, however long it's going to be, of the balancing act. But I'm stoked to be doing with this, mate.
Yeah,
it's going to be a lot of fun.
Great.
So I don't know. I guess you subscribe and do the bell thing. I don't know how this works. That's Andrew's department. He's the editor behind the scenes.
Yeah,
so
we're not going to do that though. Can we just?
we're not doing that.
Can we just agree, like fundamentally, that we're going to go subscribe and press the bell? Like Andrew can maybe do a post-edit little thing, but
He could probably, because he's a clever guy. Yeah. Do we also mention that we're not going to talk about homeschoolers? Because you've got a really strong opinion about those guys. Like, if we're not going to do the subscribe, do we need to put other barriers in place?
Why do you do this?
Well, because I think it's funny, because one of the people that we've got on actually was a homeschooler, and so you've just got such a strong opinion about this stuff that I'm just really.
You know what? I've never brought up any of the bad stuff you said in the previous.
I didn't read this. Lying makes Jesus cry. Hey, come with us. This will be fun. Bless you guys.